The moving truck stopped in front of House 42 on Maple Ridge Street, a peaceful road lined with clean sidewalks, trimmed lawns, and identical mailboxes. The neighborhood looked perfect, almost too perfect. Every grass blade seemed measured, every house painted in the same soft beige color. It was the kind of place where birds didn't just fly, they followed HOA rules too. Inside the truck, Emily Carter took a slow breath. She sat in her wheelchair, watching the sunlight hit the rooftop of her new home. It looked warm, safe, and quiet. After months of hospitals, therapy, and stress, she hoped this place would finally feel like a new beginning. Beside her stood her husband, Jake Carter, tall, calm, and with silent eyes that had seen more than most people could imagine. Years of Navy SEAL missions had shaped him into someone who noticed every small detail, every movement, every shadow. Now, for the first time in years, he wanted a normal life. No danger. No missions. Just peace with his wife. "Looks like a fresh start," Jake said softly, unloading a box from the back of the truck. Emily smiled back. "I hope so. I really do." But the peace they imagined was already being watched. Across the street, hidden behind half-closed blinds, someone was peeking. A pair of sharp eyes followed their every move. The blinds twitched. A face appeared for a second, a woman with tightly tied hair, a stiff neck, and a clipboard in her hand. HOA Karen. Her real name was Karen Bloomfield, but no one in the neighborhood used her last name anymore. She was known for one thing: control. Every house, every mailbox, every flower bed had to match her standards. And she loved finding violations. When she saw the wheelchair ramp attached to the Carter's moving truck, she raised an eyebrow. "Not standard," she said to herself. When she saw a small potted plant Emily had brought, she frowned. "Wrong color for our neighborhood theme." When she saw Jake's muscular build and military bags, she tightened her lips. New people. New problems. She grabbed her pen and started writing on her clipboard before the Carters had even moved inside. The sun was warm but gentle as Jake set the first box inside the house. Emily rolled in behind him. The smell of fresh paint mixed with the soft scent of new carpet welcomed them. It felt like a home waiting to be filled with laughter and quiet mornings. A few neighbors walked by, giving polite waves. Some smiled kindly at Emily. Others looked nervous, like they wanted to say something but were scared someone might hear. It didn't take long for Jake to notice. "These people look careful," he said, watching a man walk his dog without making eye contact. Emily looked too. "Maybe they're shy?" Jake shook his head. "Shy people don't look over their shoulder every 4 seconds." The man walking the dog quickly crossed the street when he saw someone open their door. He whispered, "Karen's coming," and hurried away. Emily didn't understand yet. Jake didn't either. But they were about to. Karen marched across the street like a general walking onto a battlefield. Her shoes clicked sharply on the pavement. The clipboard swung like a weapon in her hand. She stopped right in front of Jake and Emily without even saying hello. "Name," she demanded. Jake turned slowly, not used to people speaking to him like that. "Jake. And this is my wife, Emily." Karen scribbled something on her clipboard. "Move in time?" she asked. Right now?" Emily replied politely. Scribble, scribble. "Is that wheelchair ramp temporary?" Emily hesitated. "Yes, but I need it. For now." Karen didn't smile. She didn't blink. She stared at the ramp like it was a monster crawling into her neighborhood. "We have a standard. Everything must match." Jake stepped forward, very calm. "It's medically necessary." Karen raised her chin. "We'll see about that." She walked around their yard without asking, writing notes, shaking her head, and pretending she was inspecting a crime scene. Emily whispered, "Is she serious?" Jake whispered back, "Too serious." Karen pointed at their mailbox. "This shade of black is not the correct HOA-approved black." Jake blinked slowly. "There's more than one shade of black?" Karen crossed her arms. In this neighborhood, yes. Emily tried not to laugh, but Karen turned toward her with sharp eyes. We expect full compliance. I run the HOA board. If you have questions, bring them to me. Then she turned and marched away like a queen returning to her castle. Jake watched her leave, his jaw tightening just a little. Emily sighed. Well, that was not the warm welcome I expected. And across the street, Karen peeked from her window again, smiling like she had already won some secret battle. The rest of the day, the Carters unpacked. Emily tried to focus on the good things, the soft wind, the clean streets, the friendly birds sitting on the roof. But every time she looked up, she felt eyes watching. At sunset, a woman from next door secretly approached them, holding a plate of cookies like it was evidence she wasn't supposed to have. Hi, she whispered. Welcome to the neighborhood. Jake smiled. Thank you. She looked around nervously. I can't stay long. If Karen sees me, she'll think I'm talking about her. Emily frowned. Why? Is something wrong? The woman took a deep breath. Karen controls everything here. The rules, the fines, the inspections. People are scared of her. She's extreme. Jake crossed his arms. Extreme how? She has fined people for having the wrong color curtains. For putting a small toy on the lawn. For having a slightly noisy air conditioner. And she loves power, too much power. Emily listened quietly, realizing the peaceful neighborhood wasn't as peaceful as she'd hoped. The woman stepped back. Be careful. Karen always tests new families. Jake's eyes narrowed slightly, like a soldier sensing an enemy long before the first attack. Thank you for the warning, he said. The neighbor hurried away like someone running from danger. When night came, the Carters sat in their new living room. Emily rested in her wheelchair, feeling tired but hopeful. Jake sat beside her, but his eyes kept drifting to the window. He had noticed something. A shadow. Across the street. Karen. Watching their house again. Emily touched his arm. Everything okay? Jake gave a small smile. Yeah. Just getting a feel for the place. But inside, something was already sharpening, a quiet awareness, a sense of coming trouble. He had faced enemies in war zones. But this time, the enemy was a woman with a clipboard, a smile without kindness, and a hunger for control. Emily didn't know Karen yet. Jake didn't fear her. But Karen? She had already decided the Carters would follow her rules. And if they didn't? She was ready for war. The next morning, Maple Ridge Street looked peaceful, but something in the air felt different. The wind was soft, the birds were quiet, and even the sunlight had a strange stillness. It was as if the neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Emily woke up early, feeling hopeful. She wanted to enjoy her first quiet morning in her new home. She rolled her wheelchair toward the small porch, ready to drink tea outside. But as soon as she opened the door, a chill ran down her spine. There was a paper on the ground. Not folded. Not placed gently. But stabbed into the welcome mat with a small metal pin. Emily frowned and picked it up. It was a notice. A violation notice. Unapproved structure, wheelchair ramp. Immediate correction required. Signed, HOA President, Karen Bloomfield. Emily's hands trembled slightly. Already? They had been here less than 24 hours. Jake came up behind her. Everything okay? Emily tried to smile but couldn't. She passed the notice to him. Jake read it once. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. She's testing us. Emily nodded, her heart beating a little too fast. I thought she might wait at least 1 week. Jake looked toward Karen's house. The blinds were half open. Someone was watching. He didn't stare long, but he saw enough movement, a shadow, the outline of Karen's face. Let's not react, Jake said softly. That's what she wants. Emily agreed, but inside she felt a growing unease, like someone standing too close behind her, even when no one was there. Later that day, Emily tried to distract herself by organizing the kitchen. But every few minutes, she sensed something. A presence. A glance. A watcher. She turned toward the window. Karen stood across the street, pretending to trim her bushes. But her eyes kept lifting, staring straight at Emily's house. Not a friendly stare. Not even a curious stare. It was the stare of someone who believed she owned the street. Emily rolled away from the window. Her heart beat faster with each hour. Jake spent the afternoon fixing small things around the house. He stayed quiet, but he noticed everything. He noticed the same black SUV driving past their house 4 times. He noticed Karen pretending to measure something near the road while watching their driveway. He noticed neighbors walking faster than usual, heads down, not wanting to get involved. Jake had dealt with dangerous situations before. He felt the same kind of tension now, not physical danger, but psychological. A slow, creeping attack. And it wasn't aimed at him. It was aimed at Emily. That was the part that bothered him most. Just before sunset, Emily decided to water her flowers, the small, colorful ones she loved. She hoped a little nature would calm her mind. She rolled outside with the watering can and tried to focus only on the soft petals. The street was silent. Too silent. Then she heard it. A camera click. Emily froze. The sound came from the right, near the large oak tree. She looked, but the shadows were thick. Another camera click. Then another. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She slowly rolled back toward the porch. A sudden voice came from behind the tree. Flowers are not allowed without HOA approval. Emily jumped. Her heart raced. Karen stepped out of the shadows, holding her phone in her hand like a weapon. Her smile was cold and too tight. We have rules here, Karen said softly, almost whispering. And you're breaking them already. Emily swallowed hard. I thought flowers were okay. Karen stepped closer. Too close. They are. But only in HOA-approved colors. Yours are not approved. Emily looked at her flowers. They were soft pink, peaceful, harmless. Karen raised her phone and snapped more pictures. For the record, she whispered. Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, fear from a person, not from her disability. I didn't know, Emily said quietly. We just moved in. Karen leaned down slightly, like she wanted Emily to feel small even in a wheelchair. I know you just moved in, she said. And it is my job to make sure new people understand who runs this neighborhood. Emily's hands tightened on the wheels of her chair. She suddenly felt unsafe, like a child trapped in a corner. Then a voice broke the tension. Step back. Jake. He stood in the doorway, his presence strong and calm, but with a cold edge that made Karen pause. Karen looked at him with a forced smile. Oh, Jake. I was just educating your wife on our rules. Jake didn't move. You don't need to approach her from behind trees. Karen lifted her chin. I go where I need to go. It's my street. Jake held her gaze, not aggressive, not angry, but unbreakable. Karen looked away first. We'll talk during the HOA inspection tomorrow, she said quickly. Make sure your rampant flowers are ready for review. Then she walked off, fast and stiff, like someone who wanted to run but refused to show fear. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Jake came to her side. You okay? Emily nodded weakly. She scares me. Jake looked down at the violation notice still in her hand. She wants to scare you. Emily's voice cracked. Why us? Jake didn't answer right away. He looked at Karen's window again. The blinds twitched. Someone was watching. She wants control, Jake finally said. And new families threaten her control. Emily wiped her eyes. What do we do? We stay calm, Jake said. His voice was low but firm. And we don't let her break you. Emily nodded, but inside she felt the fear spreading slowly, like cold water rising inch by inch. As night fell, strange things began to happen. The streetlights flickered near their house. Their mailbox door was found open, even though they hadn't checked the mail. Slow footsteps passed by their window at midnight. Soft tapping sounds came from their fence. A small paper note slid under their door with only 3 words. Follow the rules. Emily woke up with a gasp, clutching the note in her shaking hand. Jake stood beside the window, awake, watching the street like a soldier guarding a base. He didn't say it out loud, but he felt it deep inside. Karen wasn't simply strict. She wasn't simply bossy. She was obsessed. And this was only her first attack. The next morning arrived slowly, as if the sun itself was afraid to rise over Maple Ridge Street. A heavy quietness hung in the air, thick, heavy, unnatural. It wasn't normal silence. It was the silence of something watching. The silence before something worse. Emily woke up from a restless night. Every sound had frightened her, the tapping on the fence, the footsteps outside, the strange whisper-like breeze sliding through their yard. She looked at the small note on the table. Follow the rules. The words felt colder in the morning light. She rolled toward the window and peeked outside. For a moment, she saw nothing. Empty street. Clean sidewalks. Quiet houses. Then, almost like a horror movie scene, a figure slowly came into view. Karen. She wasn't walking on the sidewalk. She wasn't checking her mail. She wasn't doing anything normal. She was standing in the middle of the street, completely still, facing their house. Watching. Emily gasped and backed away from the window. Jake entered the room at the same moment. Saw her? Emily nodded quickly. She's just standing there. Jake walked to the window and looked. But now Karen was gone, like she had melted into the morning air. Jake's brows lowered slightly. She wants us constantly on edge. Emily whispered, it's working. By noon, the neighborhood felt wrong. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, then quickly pulled away. A mailman stopped at the end of the street, looked at Karen's house, sighed, and decided not to deliver anything that day. Emily decided she needed fresh air. She rolled outside onto the porch, hoping the sunlight might make her feel safe. But the moment she opened the door, a click sound echoed. A camera. Emily froze. Across the street, Karen stood with a long lens camera, big, expensive, the kind used by reporters or paparazzi. She snapped pictures rapidly, each flash invisible but each click sharp enough for Emily to hear. Emily called out, "Why are you taking pictures of me?" Karen didn't answer. Instead, she lowered the camera slowly and gave a smile, a stretched, unnatural smile that felt more like a threat than a gesture. She held up her clipboard and tapped it with her pen. Tap. 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 Emily closed the door quickly. Jake was already walking down the hallway. She took pictures again? Emily nodded. She's hunting me. Jake's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with a calm, deadly patience. She's crossing lines, he said. Emily whispered, I don't know how much more I can take. Jake knelt beside her wheelchair. You don't face her alone. I'm here. But even as he spoke, a loud thud hit their front door. Emily jumped. Jake stood instantly, stepping in front of her. He opened the door slowly. No one was there. But hanging from the doorknob was a new notice. Not placed. Taped aggressively. HOA warning, unauthorized vehicle parking. Under it, a photo of Jake's truck parked perfectly in his own driveway. Emily whispered, this is insane. Jake accepted the paper without reacting. She's escalating. The afternoon grew stranger. At exactly 3 p.m., a drone appeared above their house. A small, buzzing, black drone with a camera attached. Emily looked out the window and covered her mouth. Jake, she's using a drone? Jake stepped onto the porch and stared up at it. The drone angled downward, watching him, recording him. Then it shifted toward Emily's window. Jake didn't move. Didn't shout. Didn't react. He simply walked back inside. Emily looked at him in shock. You're not going to stop it? Jake shook his head. If I hit it or knock it down, she'll claim we damaged her property. She wants us to react. Not yet. Emily felt goosebumps rise on her arms. So we just let her watch us? Jake looked toward the window. For now. Inside his mind, however, Jake had already begun something dangerous. A quiet plan. A method. A pattern. A strategy. He wasn't a man who reacted emotionally. He was a Navy SEAL. And SEALs watched before they struck. Around 5 p.m., someone knocked on the door again. But this time it was soft, nervous. Emily opened it to find a man in his 40s, shaking slightly, holding a dog leash with no dog at the end. Hi. I'm Mark. I live 2 houses down, he whispered. I shouldn't be here. Karen watches everything. Emily stepped aside so he could speak quietly. Mark lowered his voice. Listen. Karen is not normal. She becomes obsessed with new people. She controls even the smallest thing. She once fined a family for having a pumpkin on their porch in October. Emily blinked. But that's normal decoration. Mark nodded quickly. Not for her. She calls them disruptions to uniformity. She loves power. And she hates when someone doesn't fear her. Emily's hands shook. She's already targeting us. Mark looked around nervously. You two are the biggest threat she's had. A strong ex-military man, a woman she thinks she can control. She will not stop until she breaks you. Emily swallowed. Why doesn't anyone fight her? Mark's voice cracked. Because she destroyed every person who tried. Then he stepped back suddenly like someone had thrown cold water at him. She's watching, he whispered urgently. He rushed away, almost running. Emily felt sick. Jake. Mark is scared of her like she's a monster. Jake didn't say anything for a moment. He looked at the ceiling, where the sound of the drone buzzed faintly. She is a monster, he finally said. But monsters fall. That night, Emily woke from a soft noise. A whisper. A whisper outside her window. She carefully rolled toward the curtains, and froze. Karen was standing in the yard. At 1:30 in the morning. Facing the window. Holding her phone light up like a lantern. Emily's heart pounded so hard she felt dizzy. Jake rushed into the room. What happened? Emily pointed, unable to speak. Jake pulled the curtain aside just a little. Karen wasn't taking pictures. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't even moving. She was smiling at the window like she was smiling at them. Jake whispered, she's completely obsessed. Then Karen slowly lifted her clipboard and tapped it again. Tap. 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 Jake stepped in front of the window so she couldn't see Emily. Karen stared at him for a long, eerie moment. Then turned and walked back into the shadows. Emily burst into tears. Why is she doing this? Jake gently held her shoulders. Because she thinks she can break you. He looked toward the dark street. But she's wrong. His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes before something dangerous. The kind of calm that meant Jake was no longer just watching. He was preparing. And Karen had no idea what kind of man she was provoking. The next morning felt wrong before it even began. The sky was gray, not from clouds, but from a strange, heavy stillness that hung over Maple Ridge Street. Even the birds seemed confused, flying low and quietly, as if they didn't want to disturb something sleeping. Emily sat in the living room, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. She tried to calm herself, but every small sound made her flinch. After last night, the whisper, the drone, Karen staring through the window like a shadow with a smile, Emily barely got any sleep. Jake walked into the room, calm as always. But Emily knew his calm was something dangerous. She saw it in his eyes, the quiet focus of a man preparing for a mission. He handed her a paper. Emily read it slowly. HOA emergency meeting, required attendance. Reason, multiple violations by House 42. Time, 6 p.m. today. Location, Community Center Hall. Requested by HOA President, Karen Bloomfield. Emily felt her heart sink. She's dragging us into a meeting already, she whispered. Jake nodded. This is her trap. Emily's hands trembled. What do we do? Jake placed a hand on her shoulder. We go. Emily looked terrified. Jake leaned closer, voice low and steady. And we don't go in scared. We go in watching. Listening. Come. Emily nodded, but inside, fear curled like cold smoke. As the day passed, the neighborhood changed in small but unsettling ways. A mother walking her child immediately crossed the street when she saw Emily. A man picking up his newspaper quickly turned away. A teenager mowing his lawn shut his machine off the moment Karen appeared outside. People weren't avoiding Emily. They were avoiding being seen talking to her. Karen's influence was everywhere, like thick vines wrapped around every house. Around noon, a new notice appeared on their door. Jake opened it. HOA prepared report, potential fines for House 42. Ramp, violation. Flowers, violation. Parking, violation. Decorations, violation. Wheelchair tracks on lawn, violation. Unfriendly behavior, violation. Suspicious activity at night, violation. Emily's eyes widened. Wheelchair tracks? Unfriendly behavior? Suspicious activity? Jake exhaled slowly. She's building a case. Emily felt tears rise. A case for what? Jake looked at the list again. To remove us. Or to bankrupt us. Emily covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Jake placed a hand on her back. Don't worry. This isn't the first time someone tried to intimidate us. Emily looked at him with fear. But this is a neighborhood, not a battlefield. Jake's expression was unreadable. Every battlefield looks peaceful from far away. The hours crawled until finally, 6 p.m. arrived. Jake pushed Emily's wheelchair toward the community center, a small brick building with white doors and 2 flags standing outside. But the moment they approached, Emily realized this was no normal meeting. People were already seated in rows. Their eyes followed her. Not with kindness. Not with curiosity. But with fear. Fear of the woman standing at the front of the room. Karen. She stood tall, clipboard in hand, wearing a blazer so stiff it looked like armor. Her smile stretched unnaturally wide as the Carters entered. Oh, wonderful, she said loudly. They came. Her voice echoed around the room like cold metal. Jake pushed Emily to the front row and stood beside her. Karen cleared her throat dramatically. Let's begin this emergency meeting. Today, we will discuss major violations committed by House 42. She tapped her clipboard hard. Tap. 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 Emily's stomach twisted. Jake remained calm, posture steady, eyes following every movement in the room. Karen lifted the first photo. It was Emily pouring water on her flowers. Issue number 1, Karen announced, unauthorized flower colors. Emily whispered, this is ridiculous. Karen held up another photo, Emily sitting on the porch. Issue 2, visual clutter. A murmur ran through the audience. Then she held up a picture of Jake's truck. Issue 3, oversized vehicle. Then came a photo of their wheel ramp. Issue 4, Structure Not Matching Neighborhood Aesthetic. Then Karen held up a final picture, one taken through Emily's window. Emily gasped loudly. Jake's body went stiff, jaw tightening. Karen said sweetly, Issue 5, Lack of blinds at night, causing visual disruption for neighbors. Emily whispered, horrified, She took that from my bedroom window. Jake's eyes slowly shifted to Karen. For the first time, something cold flickered there, dangerous cold. Karen misread it as fear. She smiled wider. Now then, she said, turning toward the board members, I recommend we fine House 42 for all violations. And if they cannot follow the rules, we must consider giving them a notice to leave. Emily's breath caught. Leave? We just moved here. Karen clapped her hands lightly. Exactly. And you have already brought chaos. Jake finally stepped forward. The room fell silent. He spoke with a voice calm enough to make people uneasy. Are you finished? Karen blinked. Excuse me? Jake repeated softly, Are you finished? Karen smiled. I am the HOA president. I decide when we're finished. Jake nodded once. Good. Then it's my turn to speak. Karen scoffed. This is not a debate. Jake ignored her entirely and addressed the entire room. Everyone here knows Karen has overstepped her power. Everyone here knows she watches people at night. Everyone here knows she takes photos without permission. Everyone here knows she threatens fines to silence you. The room grew tense. People exchanged nervous glances. Mark, the neighbor with the dog, lowered his eyes. Karen's smile twitched. These are lies. Jake spoke slowly, deliberately. Then why did you take a picture inside my wife's bedroom window? The room erupted. Gasps. Whispers. People turning their heads sharply. Karen froze for half a second, a crack in her armor. She tried to regain control quickly. That picture was part of a routine inspection. Jake leaned slightly forward. Routine inspections don't happen at 1:30 in the morning. The room grew louder. People whispered now without hiding it. Karen lifted her clipboard, voice rising. This meeting is out of order. Jake didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Your behavior is out of order. Karen's face reddened. You can't speak to me like this. Jake stepped closer, not threatening, but unshakably firm. You targeted a disabled woman. You stalked her. You watched her sleep. And you think no one will stand up to you. Karen jabbed her pen in his direction. I will have you fined. Jake cut her off with a razor-sharp sentence. You won't have anything when I'm done. The room went dead silent. Karen's face twisted. Fear flashed in her eyes for the very first time. Jake continued, voice calm and deadly. This meeting is not a trap for us. It's the beginning of your downfall. Karen backed up a step. Just one. But everyone saw it. Emily felt a strange sensation. Relief. Hope. Strength. Jake placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. This is the last time you threaten my wife, he said, eyes locked on Karen. Then he pushed Emily's wheelchair toward the exit while the room buzzed with chaotic whispers. Karen stood frozen, breathing hard, clipboard shaking in her hand. And when Jake and Emily reached the door, Karen whispered so quietly only she could hear it. This isn't over. She was right. But what she didn't know was that she had just awakened the worst possible enemy. A calm one. A patient one. A Navy SEAL. The night after the HOA meeting was colder than usual. A thin fog slid across Maple Ridge Street like a ghost trying to hide the truth beneath it. Most houses were dark, their owners pretending to sleep while fear kept their eyes open. But House 42 was awake. Emily sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, rubbing her hands nervously. She couldn't stop thinking about the photos Karen took, the accusations, the way the neighbors avoided them. she felt watched even in her own home. Jake, however, was a different story. He sat at the dining table with a laptop open, papers spread around, and a silent, dangerous focus in his eyes. He wasn't angry. He wasn't panicking. He was planning. Emily watched him. She had seen that look before. It was the expression Jake wore before a mission. A mission he expected to win. "Jake," she whispered. He didn't look up. "I'm working." Emily rolled closer. "What are you doing?" Jake finally lifted his eyes to hers. "Something I should have done the moment she threatened you," he said quietly. "I'm finding everything about Karen." Emily felt a chill. "Jake, this is not a battlefield." Jake shook his head slowly. "Every place becomes a battlefield when someone tries to hurt my family." The room fell silent. And Jake continued typing. The investigation begins. Jake started with public documents. Homeowner records. City codes. HOA laws. Tax records. Court history. Property violations. His fingers moved fast, precise, like a surgeon cutting away lies. Emily watched, amazed. "How do you know where to look?" Jake answered without emotion. "I was trained to gather intelligence in hostile environments. And this neighborhood is hostile." Emily placed her hand on his. "Please, be careful." Jake gently squeezed her hand but didn't stop working. A strange pattern. After 2 hours of digging, Jake noticed something. Karen had filed dozens of complaints. Against families. Against old neighbors. Against delivery drivers. Even against children playing outside. But the strangest thing? Every person she targeted eventually moved away. Jake leaned back, eyes narrowing. She pushes people out. It's her pattern. Emily whispered, "She likes empty houses?" "No," Jake said softly. "She likes control. She can't control people who stand up to her. So she removes them." Emily shivered. "And now she's trying to remove us." Jake nodded once. "But she chose the wrong family." Jake leaves the house. Quietly. At around midnight, Jake stood up. "Stay inside," he said. Emily grabbed his sleeve. "Where are you going?" Jake put on a dark jacket. "To see something." Emily's voice broke. "Jake, please." Jake leaned down, kissed her forehead, and whispered. "I'll be back. Promise." Then he stepped out into the fog. Emily watched from the window, heart pounding. Jake didn't walk toward Karen's house. He didn't walk toward the street. He walked to the backyards, quiet, hidden, silent. He moved like a shadow. Like a man trained to disappear. The forgotten neighbors. Jake's first stop was the house with the blue mailbox, Mark's house, the nervous man with the missing dog leash. Lights were off. Curtains closed. But Jake noticed a small sign on the door. For sale. Jake shook his head. She scared another one away. He checked another house Karen had complained about. For sale. And another. For sale. 3 houses on the same street. All leaving. Jake whispered to himself, "She's a disease." He continued deeper into the neighborhood. A secret in the HOA office. The community center was closed, officially. But Jake wasn't looking for open doors. He was looking for cracks. And he found one, a side window unlocked, barely noticeable. He slipped inside silently. Inside the small HOA office, Jake found it. A locked cabinet labeled "Confidential, HOA President Only." Jake smirked. Of course. He found a thin piece of metal, bent it perfectly, and inserted it into the lock. 2 minutes later. Click. The drawer opened. Jake's eyes hardened. Inside were Fines that were never recorded. Cash payment envelopes with no receipts. Photos of neighbors taken late at night. Secret complaint forms Karen filed under fake names. Documents showing Karen altered HOA rules without vote. Jake whispered, "She's been stealing money and terrorizing people." Then he found something worse. A thick folder labeled House 42, Special File. He opened it slowly. Inside were printed photos of Emily. Sitting by the window. Rolling outside. Sleeping with the curtain partly open. Talking to neighbors. Jake's hands tightened. The dates on the photos? Some were taken before they moved in. Jake stared at them, stunned. Karen had been watching them weeks before they arrived. She targeted Emily before she even knew her. For the first time, Jake felt a cold, controlled fury rise inside him. A military fury. A dangerous fury. A patient fury. He closed the file. This ends now. Jake's return, the calm before the storm. Jake returned home quietly before sunrise. Emily was awake, waiting, fear in her eyes. "What did you find?" she whispered. Jake knelt beside her and spoke softly, but with steel in his voice. "She's been spying on us long before we moved in. She has a file on you. She's stolen money. She's broken laws. And she has bullied families out of their homes." Emily covered her mouth in shock. Jake looked her in the eyes. "I'm going to bring her down. Not loudly. Not angrily. But the way people like her never see coming." Emily whispered, "How?" Jake stood and spoke quietly. "I've already started. The first move." At 7 a.m., Karen stepped outside with her usual smug routine, clipboard in hand, ready to inspect every inch of the street. But this morning, something was different. Her mailbox was stuffed full. Filled with envelopes. Karen frowned and pulled them out. Inside she found copies of her secret complaint forms. Photos she took of people at night. Illegal fine receipts she hid. And city code violations she committed. Each envelope had the same message written on a card. "We see you now." Karen's face went pale. She looked across the street at House 42. Jake stood in the doorway, calm, hands in his pockets. Their eyes met. Jake didn't smile. Didn't move. Didn't blink. Karen felt a chill she had never felt before. Because for the first time, she realized the new family wasn't scared of her. And she had no idea how much danger she was now in. Karen's morning started with fear, something she never felt before. Her hands shook as she held the envelopes Jake had sent, evidence of her secrets, her lies, her nighttime spying. She kept looking at House 42. Jake stood there like a statue, calm, steady, unreadable. Karen quickly retreated into her house, slamming the door. But the moment she turned around, she froze. Her living room lights were flickering. Her phone kept buzzing with emails. A faint, soft knock echoed from somewhere inside the house, like the house itself was warning her. Karen whispered to herself. Who is he? She had thrown anger, noise, and threats at many people before. But this was different. This was quiet. This was controlled. This was military. Jake's plan begins. Jake sat down at the dining table with a cup of coffee. Emily watched him carefully. You look calm, she said. Jake nodded. Revenge is not emotional. Not for people like her. It's strategy. Emily swallowed. What did you do? Jake didn't answer directly. Instead, he said. People like Karen win because no one challenges them. Everyone thinks they're too loud to fight. But loud people fall the hardest. Emily leaned closer. So what's next? Jake smiled softly, a rare, dangerous smile. I will take everything she uses to control people. And turn it against her. Step 1, Exposure. At 9 a.m., Karen heard her phone ringing nonstop. She checked the HOA group chat. Her heart dropped. Someone had posted screenshots of her illegal fines, fake complaints, and midnight photos. More screenshots showed her breaking rules she forced on others. Neighbors she bullied for years were suddenly talking. She fined me for a plant. She took money from us. She threatened my daughter. She watched us at night. Karen typed fast. This is fake. Someone is hacking me. But no one believed her. The HOA board president replied. Karen, please report to the community center immediately. Karen felt her chest tighten. She wasn't in control anymore. Step 2, the inspections. At 10 a.m., a white truck with the city logo parked in front of Karen's house. Karen ran outside. What are you doing here? The inspector held a clipboard. We received multiple reports about illegal property modifications and violations. What reports? From who? The inspector showed her an official document. It listed every violation Karen had committed over the past 3 years. Karen's face drained of color. I can explain. No need, the inspector said calmly. We'll be checking everything. Jake watched from his porch, sipping coffee. Step 3, the financial hit. Around noon, Karen finally got the courage to check her email fully. There were messages from the IRS, the City Code Department, the HOA Legal Office, a lawyer representing past neighbors, and even her own insurance company. Every email was about checks she never recorded, fines she took, money she hid. Karen felt dizzy. This can't be happening. But it was. Jake had collected everything. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't confront. He exposed. That was more painful. Step 4, social collapse. By afternoon, Karen walked outside to talk to neighbors. But no one looked at her. People turned away. Children were pulled inside. A man mowing his lawn didn't even pause when Karen tried to speak to him. She lost the power she loved most. Fear. People weren't scared of her anymore. They were disgusted. And that kind of loss hits harder than any punishment. Jake knew this. This was part of his plan. Step 5, the HOA meeting. At 5 p.m., the emergency HOA meeting began. Everyone showed up. Even neighbors who moved away drove back to share their stories. Karen stood in front of the room shaking, her usual confidence gone. The HOA president cleared his throat. Karen, due to overwhelming evidence of abuse of power, illegal fines, privacy violations, and unapproved rule changes, we vote to remove you as president. Karen gasped. You can't do that. I made this neighborhood safe. A woman stood up. No. You made it scary. Another neighbor added. You turned this place into your kingdom. Mark, the man whose dog leash was missing, lifted his hand. You bullied my kids. Everyone started speaking at once. Karen covered her ears. Stop. Stop. This is all a setup. He did this. She pointed at Jake. Everyone turned to look at him. Jake stood with his hands behind his back, face calm. The president asked, Jake, do you wish to say anything? Jake nodded once and stepped forward. His voice was low, steady, strong. I didn't do anything to Karen. I only held a mirror in front of her. Everything you found, she did to herself. Karen screamed, liar. Jake didn't look at her. He looked at the board. People like her don't fear police. They don't fear rules. They fear exposure. Truth is the only thing they can't fight. The room fell silent. The board signed the removal paper. Karen's power died that moment. After the meeting, Karen ran out crying, shaking, screaming into the air. Jake walked outside slowly, hands in pockets. Karen saw him and froze. She whispered, voice broken, "You destroyed my life." Jake stepped closer, calm, controlled, unbothered. "No," he said softly. "You destroyed your life the moment you attacked my wife." Karen stumbled backward, helpless, small. Jake walked past her without another word. He didn't need to say more. The war was already over. And he had won. That night, peace at House 42. Emily waited by the window, heart beating fast. When Jake entered, she rushed to him. "Is it over?" she asked. Jake placed a gentle hand on her cheek. "It's over." Emily smiled for the first time in weeks. Jake sat beside her, finally relaxed. "You didn't fight her," she whispered. "You dismantled her." Jake smiled lightly. Sometimes the strongest revenge is a truth the enemy can't escape. Emily rested her head on his shoulder. And outside, for the first time in a long time, the neighborhood was quiet. Peaceful. Normal. Karen's reign was over. And Jake's legendary revenge would never be forgotten. For the first time since they moved into Maple Ridge, the night felt soft again. The air was calm. The street was quiet. And House 42 finally felt like a home instead of a battlefield. Emily sat by the window, listening to the soft sound of crickets. The moonlight touched her face gently, like a blessing after a long storm. Jake walked into the living room, holding 2 cups of warm tea. "You should rest," he said softly. Emily looked at him and smiled, a real, peaceful smile, something she had almost forgotten how to do. "I will," she replied. "But tonight, I just want to sit here. I finally feel safe." Jake handed her the tea and sat beside her, his face relaxed for the first time in weeks. No tension. No anger. Just quiet strength. Karen's house, a shadow fades. Across the street, Karen's house was dark. No lights. No shouting. No spying. Her car was gone. Her mailbox was empty. Her windows were covered. Jake had heard from a neighbor that she left earlier that evening, rushing away with boxes thrown into her trunk, crying and shouting, blaming everyone but herself. Jake didn't watch her leave. He didn't need to. The war was over. And she had defeated herself. Emily's heart finally opens. Emily took a slow sip of her tea. Her hands didn't shake anymore. "I want to tell you something," she said. Jake turned toward her, listening carefully. "When Karen was yelling at me, I felt small. I felt weak. Like I didn't belong anywhere." Jake reached out and held her hand gently. "You were never weak," he said. Emily shook her head softly. "I tried to ignore her. I tried to stay calm. But every time she looked at me, I felt like I was the problem." Jake squeezed her hand. "She wanted you to feel that way." Emily looked into his eyes. "But you didn't fight her with anger. You didn't break her door. You didn't shout. You didn't even touch her. You fought her in a way she could never understand." Jake's voice was warm. "Because real strength is quiet, Em." Emily rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm proud of you." Jake closed his eyes for a moment, letting the peace settle inside him. The neighborhood changes. The next morning, something surprising happened. Neighbors began walking toward House 42, slowly, carefully, like people waking from a long nightmare. Mark was the first one. The man with the missing dog leash. He knocked gently on their door. Jake opened it. Mark smiled nervously. Hey. I just wanted to say, thank you." Jake nodded. "For what?" Mark scratched the back of his neck. "For ending it. For standing up to her. We all wanted to, but none of us could. A woman from 3 houses down joined him. She blackmailed us. We were scared of her. But you didn't let her scare you. Another neighbor added, you saved this street. Emily rolled to the door, surprised by the crowd forming on their lawn. A little girl walked forward holding a small bunch of flowers. She handed them to Emily and said quietly, "These are for you. My mom said you're really brave." Emily's eyes softened. She touched the flowers gently. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake looked around at all the faces, some hopeful, some guilty, some grateful. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He simply said, "This neighborhood doesn't belong to bullies. But it does belong to good people." The neighbors nodded, and for the first time, they believed it. The quiet victory. Later that evening, Emily and Jake went for a short walk. Emily rolled along the sidewalk while Jake walked beside her, matching her pace. The street felt lighter now. Children played again. Dogs barked from open yards. People waved happily instead of avoiding eye contact. Emily breathed in slowly. This feels like a different world. Jake looked around. It's the same world. It just needed the right push. Emily laughed. Your kind of push. Jake shrugged playfully. Quiet. Calculated. Effective. She looked up at him. So, what now? Jake paused, thinking. We live, he said. We enjoy the home we fought for. We rest. We breathe. We start fresh. Emily touched his arm. And you? Are you okay? Jake smiled, small, honest, and rare. I'm always okay when you're safe. A final message from across the street. That night, Emily noticed something strange. A single envelope had been slipped under their door. Her heart jumped. Jake, what is this? Jake picked it up, opened it carefully, and read the short message inside. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to stop being strong. Until someone stronger stopped me. K. Emily covered her mouth in shock. She apologized? Jake folded the letter quietly. No. She surrendered. He placed the envelope aside. Let her leave in peace, he said softly. She's not our problem anymore. Emily nodded. She trusted him deeply. Closing scene. Peace at last. Before sleeping, Emily looked out the window one last time. A quiet street. A dark house where danger once lived. A husband who turned chaos into calm. A neighborhood finally breathing again. Jake walked up behind her, resting a hand on her shoulder. You okay? He asked. Emily smiled. I always knew you'd protect me. But this was different. You didn't just protect me. You protected all of us. Jake kissed the top of her head. I'll always protect you. Quietly. Completely. And when needed. In ways no one ever forgets. Emily closed her eyes and leaned against him. The storm was over. The night was peaceful. And their new life, their true life, could finally begin.